Welcome to Veterans Voice, where we highlight programs and services that support our veterans, both our student veterans, as well as our veterans that are in the community. My name is Robert Glover, retired Lieutenant Colonel of Marines, 17 years in counting, and also the current interim executive director for HCC's military education programs. On this show today, we're going to be commemorating Veterans Day, which is on Tuesday, November 11th, and a whole lot more. HCC has several events lined up before and during Veterans Day, but this entire year is celebrating the big three birthdays. The Army's birthday on June 14th, 1775, the Navy's birthday on October 13th, 1775, and of course, the Marine Corps' birthday on November 10th, 1775. Also, Monday, November 10th, we're going to be talking about the Marine Corps birthday specifically, because that's my end of the show, and I'll give you a lot of history on that. But like the Continental United States Army, or as I refer to it, the Army of the United States of America, was formed in 1775. So this entire show is going to cover our military in two parts, the land component as well as the sea component, much like Paul Revere's historic late night ride in 1775, with its historical reference of one if by land, two if by sea. With us to talk later about the sea part with me, who will cover the Navy, is Miss Linda Koffel, a United States Naval Reservist and retired lieutenant, and an HCC adjunct faculty here in our marketing department.
I'm honored to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Okay, thank you for being here, and we'll be coming back to you shortly. But our first guest is going to talk about how it all began, from General George Washington and the Continental Army and what evolved from there. And we're also going to hear about some fascinating personal experiences from him. So our first guest is retired Sergeant First Class for the United States Army and retiree from the Department of Veterans Affairs, Greg Fulton. Welcome to Veterans Voice. First, tell us about your own Army background.
Right. Thank you so much, Lieutenant Colonel Glover. I'm excited to be here today. Just to have an opportunity to talk about my service. So again, I'm originally from Memphis, Tennessee. I came in the military, October the 24th, 1978. From there, I began my tour of duty at Fort Bliss, Texas. So I was an Army Air Defense guy, 88 that some people called it. From there, from Air Defense, man, I knew they kept me at Fort Bliss. Worked in cavalry units, and then I went on to be a basic instructor for our Army, for our basic officer course. And then I ended up, when my dream came true, I was an Army drill sergeant, still at Fort Bliss. And then back that particular time, I think it was Desert Storm. I ended up going to Desert Storm with a Patriot Air Defense missile battery. And so my whole journey has been exciting, full of learning. And one of the most important things about this is that as a retiree, I'm able to use transferable skills to place in my life, in the whole, my community and things of that nature. One of the things that when I did a little research about George Washington in 1775 is that he was able to take a group of men and women, and he was able to fight and win against a fine British army. And I think that whole process, when I think about it, is what we carry on today, esprit de corps, discipline and focus. As a drill sergeant, I can remember going to the rifle range and telling the young guys to focus on the front and rear sight, to aim at your target and begin to fire at your target. And so in this world that we live in now, the word focus is very important. And so I don't just use the word as, I remember focusing on the target. So whatever your target is, that's transferable skills that you use out here in the military. And then, just thinking about George Washington and what happened and how he was able to fight a mighty British empire through discipline, vision, steadfast leadership. He transformed the group of patriots into a unified army. And these principles of duty the 200 years is what we carry into our life today.
Well, I tell you what, in order to cover 250 years of the Army of the United States of America, that would be impossible. But let's transition to another period. Tell us about the Buffalo Soldiers of the mid-1800s.
Well, 1865, I think 1866, 1865, the Buffalo Soldiers. The Buffalo Soldiers were a African-American group nearly a century later, and this was important, this was nearly a century later from George Washington. After the Civil War, Congress established the first permanent African-American regiment, the Buffalo Soldiers. Building roads, protecting settlers, and maintaining, they was also in the Spanish-American War. They both they was in World War II providing their vision. Despite of discrimination and everything that they had to go to, the Buffalo Soldiers unveiled and they persevered professionalism. And I think once we thinking about them, it wasn't just a Black history or African-American history, but it was military history. And as long as we can focus on military history versus separating them from not being who they are, but this is a part of our military history. So they was just amazing. Matter of fact, here in Texas, Texas obtained their freedom after everybody else. And so the Buffalo Soldiers were the first one to land in Galveston with General Granger to make sure that everybody understood in this great state of Texas that you are now free.
Great. So in the late 20th century, another transition point here, we came up with the invasion of Kuwait from Iraq.
Right.
In which started Operation Desert Shield and Desert Storm.
Right.
The first Gulf War. You served there, I served there. You have referred to it as a modern military for a global mission. How do you mean that? I
mean that as I look at General George Washington, the Buffalo Soldier, now we have a missile system. One of our missile systems was the Patriot missile system. We had radios. We had telecommunications. We was able to go in the battlefield and use technology. It's almost like going from a BlackBerry phone to an iPhone, and that's what the Gulf Wars, the Persian Gulf, did for us. Aircraft, and everything that we needed from a technology standpoint, we was able to go and do that without a lot of casualties, and so. That's the pieces of the technology, advanced technology, SIN guards, night vision goggles, ability to protect and preserve a global stability. The Gulf War marked as modern day, the beginning of the modern day military.
That, ladies and gentlemen, is Greg Fulton, retired Sergeant First Class, United States Army. And also a retiree from the Department of Veterans Affairs.
Yes, retiree.
I'm going to hit on something before we run out of time in this particular segment. You mentioned 11th ADA. My dad, the man who raised me, was a battery first sergeant in 11th ADA. So I was, when you say Fort Bliss, I go, Fort Bliss.
Right.
But that's where I started my military journey, and I'll cover that when we get to our Navy and Marine Corps segment. But again, appreciate you, sir. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you. Semper Fi.
Semper Fi, baby.
All right.
All right, there you go. All right, after a commercial break, we'll be right back to talk about the American Sea Forces, the Navy and the Marines.
For over 50 years, HCC has been here for you. Affordable, accessible, focused on your success. This is your college, growing, evolving, expanding with you. More bachelor's degrees, stronger workforce training, online learning with global reach. A new name, the same mission, bigger vision. Houston City College, local focus, global reach. Register now at hccs.edu.
Welcome back to Veterans Voice. We're moving on to Miss Linda Koffel, a retired lieutenant in the United States Naval Reserve and an HCC adjunct faculty member in our marketing department. Welcome to the show, Linda.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. Together, you and I are going to be talking about the sea services and how the Navy and Marine Corps team functions back in the day as well as today. And I'll be weaving in a little bit about the U.S. Marines into our conversation, obviously, just like I expect you to do the same with the United States Navy. But first, tell us a little bit about your own military background, please.
Well, I'm retired military. I did 5 years active duty, 15 years reserve. I'm a Vietnam era veteran. I joined in 1974. I retired in 1994. I had a variety of jobs because I started out as an enlisted person and I got a direct commission, and I ended my career as an O3E, which is a lieutenant. And so I had different types of jobs: communication, training officer. I even did public affairs for about a year and a half. So I had a lot of different experiences in the military, and I also was very fortunate to get my education through the military. So I was stationed in Cuba, stationed in Greece, and then I did a lot of away training all over the world. So
Great. Let's talk about the origins of the Navy and a brief history of the Navy, if you can.
Okay, well, like as Mr. Fulton mentioned, the Navy began during the Revolutionary War. There was, of course, a need to go against the British military and the British Navy, which was huge at the time. And at first, there was no Navy. There were states. The different states had some Navy, but they decided to put it together as a Continental Navy in 1775. But after the war, they disbanded that. And what happened was there were some huge problems with Barbary Coast pirates going all the way up the Atlantic coast and into the Caribbean. And so in 1794, October 13th, there was the Navy Act that created the actual Navy. And that was passed by Congress. And then the Navy began to grow from there. They had 6 frigates at the very beginning, one of which is still existent, and that's in Boston Harbor. And then after that, in the War of 1812, the Navy played a big role in the War of 1812 in the Great Lakes, which is not something we usually think of with the Navy, but they were there. And a big thing about the Navy that most people don't know is that between 1815 and the Civil War, there was a squadron called the African Squadron. And the purpose of that squadron was to intercept and capture trade slave ships. And they did capture 36, and they freed approximately 30,000 Africans from being slaves. And so that's when, then of course in World War I, their big mission was the U-boats. And what many people don't know is there were U-boats right off of the coast of Galveston. There were over 500 ships sunk in the Gulf of Mexico, and the Navy played a big part in that. In World War II, of course, in the Pacific theater, the Navy really helped us to win World War II in the Pacific, of course, with all the other defense groups too. But, of course, after Pearl Harbor, when the Navy lost so many ships in Pearl Harbor, the Navy became built up again. And at the end of World War II, our Navy had more ships and was stronger than the combined navies of all the other allies. And the Navy has played a big role in all of the different problems that we've had since then: Korean War, Vietnamese War, Persian Gulf, Afghanistan. There have always been naval presences in all of those conflicts. And of course, the Navy has 3 different types of services. We've got air, naval aviation, and we've got regular naval station, Navy, on Pacific and Atlantic. And also we have the submarine base, the submarine force, which I'm familiar with because I was stationed at the submarine base in Groton, Connecticut as one of my duties. So the Navy has a very varied history and traditional history of service to the United States. So
Excellent. Okay, and as far as the Marine Corps is concerned, in terms of weaving in the Marine Corps story here, Marine Corps was formed on November 10th, 1775, and is still the only service on record for having its contractors go out and recruit members for the Marine Corps in a bar. There was Tun Tavern in Philadelphia, and for 2 tankards of ale and $10, you could sign up and be a Marine, a Continental Marine. And from there, you saw the Marines load aboard our Continental Navy ships to fight off the Navy ships, the British Navy ships that were out there. And an evolution continued to grow. Much like the Navy, the Marine Corps was disbanded after the Revolutionary War and then stood back up in the 1790s. And then there's the not only the Barbary pilots, but also the legend of the Derna, Pasha of Tripoli, representing the Mameluke saber to Lieutenant Presley O'Bannon. And that particular sword still serves as our ceremonial sidearm, our ceremonial saber. So when we go on to talk about the services, the big three in this case, the Army, the Navy, and the Marine Corps, after we talk about these branches, tell us now about what the Navy does today.
Well, the Navy does all of the missions that we've talked about before. It keeps us safe all along our borders. The Pacific Fleet is out all over the Pacific, making sure that we keep track of what's going on in the Pacific. Also, we've got the Atlantic Fleet. Of course, in the Atlantic, they go and they do Mediterranean cruises, making sure that our enemies, and not necessarily enemies, but we're just making sure that everything is okay. They're protecting our seas, our borders. They're protecting our maritime trade. Also, now with aircraft carriers, they are a big part of the strategic mission of all the services because of the fact that when you have an aircraft carrier, you've essentially got a landing field in the middle of the ocean, so you can operate anywhere, wherever you are in the ocean. The other thing, too, is the submarine force, which we don't talk as much about, but the submarine force is extremely important because, of course, they are the submarines hold a lot of the missiles that are detained type of weapons. And the Navy is involved in all the logistics that have happened with a lot of the other services, because the ships have to take the goods in back and forth and all of these things that can't be flown on planes. So today the Navy is more important than ever. And we have the largest Navy in terms of tonnage, not in terms of ships, but in terms of tonnage. We have the largest Navy, which would mean the most powerful Navy right now, and we need to keep it that way. That's just the way it is. The Navy's so important to all of the services, but we work in conjunction with all of them. So, I did a joint exercise at Fort Bragg, North Carolina, a joint exercise and with the Navy, Marines, and Army. So we all work together, and that's how we protect America.
That is so true, because I think that today's young person does not really understand what the mission of the Navy is. And when you think about it, there's a reason why our presence is all over the world. First of all, there's about $4 trillion worth of commerce passing through the Straits of Malacca, from Southern Europe, the Middle East, all the way through the Straits, coming to the United States and the Western Pacific. Okay? There has to be a presence there to make sure that that commerce is getting to where it needs to go. And when you're talking about $4 trillion of goods coming every day, you can see what's happening just right now. What's going on with our tariff strategy, and how trade has been impacted between all of the countries, all of the major traders that we have, that we trade with and work with. See how that's been impacted. But when you start to pull back the layers there, you can see where the Navy is the dominant force, and the Navy is the one that's protecting all of that commerce coming to and from the United States. Let's do a little bit
I
of
did a duty.
Go ahead.
I was able to do a duty with naval control of shipping, where a lot of people don't know this. If anything should happen, the Navy takes control of merchant ships that have a flag from the U.S. And that's all a big thing, too, to plan how we're going to do it, make sure that the convoys of ships get from where they need to be to, back and forth. And that's a huge responsibility for the Navy to be there and to support.
So let's do a little bit of a transition. Let's talk about traditions, both in the Navy and Marine Corps. One of the big traditions for us, besides being called devil dogs, which we earned in World War I, because when we were fighting the Germans, it was with such ferocity that the German army used to refer to us as Teufelhunds or devil dogs, and that name stuck. Or whenever we celebrate a Marine Corps birthday, like the one that's coming up on Monday, we always pay tribute to the youngest Marine in the audience and the oldest Marine in the audience. And last year I had the privilege of doing the Marine Corps birthday ball up at the Woodlands, or the Marine Corps Coordinating Council Southeast here in Lower Texas. And the oldest Marine happened to be a World War II veteran who flew with Pappy Boyington, VMF 214. And even though he was at the time 102 years old, he walked from his table to the stage and back down to where the cake was being presented and took part in that particular tradition. So that's one of our things. We always pay tribute to the youngest and the oldest Marines in the audience wherever we have an opportunity to celebrate. Tell me about life in the Navy and some of your traditions that you've experienced while you were serving.
Well, as I said, I went from enlisted to officer, and one of the traditions is the first person who salutes you, you have to give them a silver dollar. And so as I walked out in my new uniform, I got saluted, and I gave a Susan B. Anthony silver dollar. So that's one of the traditions. And of course, there's a tradition when Navy people cross the equator. There's a ceremony that takes place, and they become, they get a certificate that they have crossed the equator. The other thing, too, is just in day-to-day life, there's a lot of traditions in the Navy that are different, like ringing the bell. When the CO comes on board, you ring the bell. When you leave, you ring the bell. And also, you have to be careful, because if you walk into a Navy officer club and put your head on the bar, they're going to ring the bell, and you're going to owe the entire bar around. So you got to be careful on some of those.
That one resonates across all the services, quite frankly.
Well, really, it's across. I didn't know.
Oh, yeah.
But, so, it's and even just the languages that we use in the Navy, we call things the deck, even if we're, on a station, naval station. And that makes it, it really makes you feel that it goes back, the traditions that they go back, and all the way back to 250 years, because we're using seafaring language that's traditional too. So I would say that. Now, life in the Navy, I was both enlisted and an officer, and I had a wonderful career. I was in Cuba, and I always tell everybody, Cuba, when I was in communications there, it was like being on vacation, only sometimes I had to work. It was just absolutely wonderful. It was beautiful. And I got to see so much while I was in the Navy, and I enjoyed the camaraderie. I learned so many things. I joined right out of high school. So, my first job in management was about 4 years later at Submarine Base, Groton, Connecticut, and where I led a team of communicators. We had a 222 and 80 watch bill, and we made sure communications were going all the time for the submarine fleet. And so that taught me so much about people. And when you're in the Navy, you learn all different things. Like, Navy's different because it can be, if you're on a small boat, that's going to be very different. You're going to go into shore a little bit more. If you're on a big ship, like a carrier, it is really a floating city. You can be on a carrier for the entire time of your tour, and there could be somebody else on that carrier at the same time, and you might not ever meet them. It is a little city. And so pretty much every job you would have to have as a civilian little town, you'd have to have on that carrier. So I would just say, there's just so much about the Navy that I loved. I love the traveling. I love the education, and they do make it very possible for people to get an education while they are in. And I loved learning. There was so much learning, all different things. Not only do you go to a school to learn your job when I was enlisted, but you also go to different schools to enhance it, and other things that you just want to learn. You can go take that school, and they'll let you do that, which is a really, really wonderful experience.
Linda, thank you for your service. Thank you for being here today. That was and is Linda Koffel, retired lieutenant of the United States Naval Reserve and HCC adjunct faculty in our marketing department. Linda, thank you for your service. Thank you for being here. And now we'll go on to our next commercial break with, and after that, some final thoughts about Veterans Day and everything that we're doing for our veterans. Thank you.
For over 50 years, HCC has been here for you. Affordable, accessible, focused on your success. This is your college, growing, evolving, expanding with you. More bachelor's degrees, stronger workforce training, online learning with global reach. A new name, the same mission, bigger vision. Houston City College, local focus, global reach. Register now at hccs.edu.
Welcome back. This is Veterans Voice. Let's close like this. For 2.5 centuries, our armed forces have stood as a symbol of courage, sacrifice, and unwavering commitment to defense of freedom. From the early struggles of the Revolutionary War to the high-tech operations of the modern era, your United States military has always represented the very best of American spirit and strength. As a matter of fact, when we talk about the 4 powers of the United States, we talk about diplomatic, informational, military, and economic. We cover the gamut. We are that good. We are that thing that makes everything come together. What I hope for you, and what everybody down here at HCC TV does on a weekly basis with Veterans Voice, is that we hope that you take the time this month and always to thank our veterans for their service and their dedication. 1% of the total population actually serves in the military or has served in the military. And also remember this, here at HCC, we have programs specifically for students who are interested in learning more about the military, going into the military as an officer or enlisted on the reserve side or becoming a DoD civilian and helping to secure our national security. To learn about those HCC programs and options, to cover your costs while you're going to school here, all you really need to do is go to hccs.edu/apply. And if you want more detailed information, you can flip down to military education and get more information about other stuff and other things that we do here at HCC. To listen to a podcast version of this show, visit hccs.edu/podcasts. Thank you for joining us on Veterans Voice, and we'll see you next time.